Hi, I'm Shannon from Chip Theory Games, and today I'm going to be introducing you to the Griege, which is an add-on faction for Cloudspire. Little is known about this reclusive insectoid race that dwell underground. Their island was not part of the original joining, only arriving after hostilities had already begun. The Griege's overall defenses are weaker in comparison to the other factions. However, they compensate for this with multiple ways to promote their units. They have a lot of very unique and strong talents, as well as a tunnel system that can allow them to get around the board. Another aspect that's unique to the Griege is while they start with 10 gate health like every other faction, their maximum gate health can go up to 15. Let's start off by talking about the Egregious Heroes. Their starting hero is Ocjab, so he has a CP cost of 0. On his basic side he has 3 health, 1 attack, 3 movement, an upgrade capacity of 1, and a source reward of 3. His terrain icon is mountains, so he can move on all terrain except water, and he has the talent Dig. Before or after movement, Ocjab can place a tunnel access chip on an adjacent non-path hex. So it could go on this forest or this plains, but not this source well. The tunnel access we'll talk about later, but it does have the talent collapsible, which means that you can remove it by covering it up with an earthscape. Ocjab's promoted side increases his attack to 2, and instead of Dig, he has Burrow. After Ocjab moves, you can burrow him by removing all of his health and placing him on any adjacent non-path hex. This hex does not need to be valid terrain for Ocjab, however it can't be a source well. While burrowed, Ocjab is inactive and can't be interacted with in any way. At the start of your next turn, Ocjab flips back to his basic side, losing any upgrades he has, and recovering to full health. He can then take his turn normally. Akul is the Griege's second hero, and he costs 3 CP to select. On his basic side he has 4 health, 1 attack, 2 movement, an upgrade capacity of 1, and rewards 3 source on defeat. His terrain is forest, so he can move on forest, plains, and path, and he has the talents Quick Counter and Capture. When Akul is attacked by an adjacent unit, such as this Battleborn, Quick Counter allows Akul to deal his retaliation damage first. And if he defeats that unit, then he doesn't take the original attack damage. Capture allows Akul to put defeated faction minions beside the Griege fortress, and this Battleborn won't be returned to the Brahmin until the Brahmin deal damage to the Griege fortress gate. On his promoted side, his movement increases to 3, and he can now hold 3 upgrades. Akul also gains the ability to move on mountains. As well, Capture is replaced with the talent Evasive. Evasive means that when Akul is attacked by a unit with the range talent, such as this Dispatch, the damage is reduced to 1 no matter how much damage is dealt. Ekri is the Griege's queen. She's their third hero and costs 5 CP to select. On her basic side, she has 2 attack, 3 movement, an upgrade capacity of 1, and grants 10 source when defeated. Her terrain is mountain, so she can move on any terrain except water, and her first talent is Queen's Blood, which relates to her health stat. Ekri's health is linked to the fortress gate's health, so when she leaves the fortress, she takes 5 health with her, reducing the fortress health by 5. This means you can't select the queen for deployment if your gate is below 5 health. When the queen returns to the fortress, her health is added back to the fortress gate. The queen also has the talent Consume. Before or after her movement, Ekri can defeat an adjacent hero that has 2 or fewer health. When she uses this talent, she flips to her promoted side, losing any upgrades she has. On her promoted side, the queen's movement decreases to 2, and her upgrade capacity increases to 3. Instead of Consume, promoted Ekri has Burrow, which we've already discussed. As a reminder, the turn after Ekri uses Burrow, she flips back to her basic side, losing any upgrade she has, but restoring to her full health of 5. Now let's talk about the Griege Minions. They have a unique way to promote themselves through a process called evolution. During the onslaught phase, at the start or end of its movement, a Griege Minion may be placed on an adjacent source well. Remove all but 1 of its health, which is placed on top of the unit. It's inactive while evolving, so it can't take a turn or generally be interacted with. However, evolving minions can still be attacked by heroes. At the start of each of your turns on the onslaught phase, you'll add 1 health to the evolving minion. When it reaches full health, in this case 3, it's immediately flipped to its promoted side and add the difference in health, if any. In this case, it does go up to 4 health. If only evolving minions are on the board, the wave does end and they'll stay where they are until the next wave, and they'll continue evolving during the next onslaught phase. The first Griege minion is the Larva. The Griege have 3 of them, and they cost 2 CP to select. They have 3 health, 1 attack, 2 movement, and grant 1 source for defeat. They can only move on path, and they have the talent Toxic Fumes. When a larva is defeated, such as by this dispatch, you can choose to place a Toxic Fumes chip in their hex. When a non-Griege unit moves onto it, it will take 1 damage. You can have multiple Toxic Fumes in the same hex, and the damage stacks, so a unit moving into this hex would take 2 damage. If the unit's defeated from that damage, then the Griege gets the source reward for that. All Toxic Fume chips are cleared from the board at the end of the wave. On the promoted side, the larva's attack increases from 1 to 2. The next Griege minions are the Skitters, and they have 2 of them. They cost 3 CP to select. Their stats are 3 health, 1 attack, 2 movement, and they grant 1 source when defeated. They can only move on path, and their talent is Dig, which we've previously discussed. When Skitters are promoted, their health increases to 4, their attack goes up to 2, and they get 3 movement. Their source reward on defeat also goes up to 2. Its Dig talent is replaced with the talent 2 range, allowing the Skitter to attack and retaliate from up to 2 hexes away, and also allowing them to attack flying units. Next is the Burrowers, which the Griege have 2 of, and they cost 3 CP each to select. They have 3 health, 1 attack, 3 movement, and a source reward of 2. They can only move on path, and they have the talent Burrow, which we've already talked about. Remember that using this talent flips the unit to its promoted side. On its promoted side, the Burrower's health increases to 4, and it now grants 3 source when defeated. Instead of the talent Burrow, it has the talent Assault. With Assault, when the Burrower attacks a spire, it removes the bottom upgrade before applying its damage, so potentially being able to remove 2 upgrades in 1 attack instead of 1. The Griege have 2 Gekweb minions, and they each cost 4 CP to select. They have 4 health, 1 attack, 2 movement, and a source reward of 2. They can only move on path, and they have the talent Toxic Secretion. Anytime a non-Griege unit moves onto a hex adjacent to this unit, it's dealt a damage. So if this Battleborn were to move through these 2 hexes, it would take 2 damage for that movement. The promoted Gekweb's health increases to 5, its attack goes up to 2, and its movement goes up to 3. It also now grants 3 source when defeated. In addition to Toxic Secretion, it gains Quick Counter, which we previously discussed. The Griege have 1 Mugwump minion. It costs 6 CP to select, and it has 3 health, 3 attack, 2 movement, and grants 3 source when defeated. It can only move on path, and it has the talents 2 range and Burrow, both of which we've already discussed. Remember that the Mugwump does promote when it uses Burrow. On its promoted side, the Mugwump's health goes up to 5, its movement increases to 3, and the reward for defeating it is now 4. It loses its previous talents and now has Recruiter. Before or after the Mugwump moves, it can convert an adjacent landmark minion to be under the Griege's control. The landmark minion immediately gets placed on a path hex adjacent to the Mugwump, and it gets to move immediately as well. When this minion's defeated, there is no reward granted. The last Griege minion is the Damp Skitter, which they have 2 of, and they each cost 6 CP to select. They have 4 health, 2 attack, 3 movement, and a source reward of 3. They have the water icon so they can move on all types of terrain. And they have the talent Flying, which means they can only be attacked by spires with the talent Air Defense and units with the talents Range or Flying. Flying units are also not able to block movement. If they would block a unit from making progress, they must trade hexes with the unit to let it pass. The Damp Skitter also has the talent Toxic Fumes, which we've already discussed. On its promoted side, its attack increases to 3, and instead of Toxic Fumes, it gets the talent Quick Counter. Now let's discuss the Griege's Fortress and Spires. First of all, the Griege Fortress is underground, so they cannot construct fortress spires at all. However, their fortress can also only be attacked adjacently. The Griege have 4 spire chips containing 2 spires, both of which are available to them from the beginning of the game. The remaining 4 chips in their faction that would normally be designated as spires are instead the double-sided Tunnel Access and Toxic Fumes chips. It's important to remember that these share the same 4 chips, so placing a tunnel axis and toxic fume on the board limits your access to the other, so you have to be mindful of that. Now let's talk about the Griege's 2 spires in greater detail. The first spire is the Hive. It has a cost of 4 to construct, and it starts with 1 attack and 1 range upgrade. Its upgrade capacity is 3, and it grants 3 source when defeated. It has the talent Air Defense. Only spires with Air Defense are able to attack units with the talent Flying. The Griege's second spire is the Brood Nest. It also costs 4 source to construct, and it starts with 1 attack and 2 fortification upgrades, making them difficult to take down. It has a total upgrade capacity of 3, and this spire grants 3 source to the defeating faction. It has the talent Spawn. At the start of your first turn during the onslaught phase, Spawn allows you to place a larva minion on a path hex adjacent to it. This doesn't cost CP or source. Now let's talk about the fortress advancements that make the Griege unique from the other factions. Their first fortress advancement is the Gateport, and just like the other factions' Gateport, it gives them abilities to manipulate the market. Level 1 is Natural Selection. It costs 2 source, and at the start of the market phase, you can look at the next 3 chips in the market stack and put them back in any order you want. So I'm going to put them back with Roa on top. Level 2 is unit sourcing, and after purchasing a chip from the market, if the next chip to refill it would be a Merc unit, you get that unit as well without paying for it. If that happens, no more market refills will take place until the end of this phase. The next fortress advancement structure is the Larva Hatchery. This assists you with fortress protection and gives the ability to get more units in play. Level 1 is the Surrogate Chamber, which costs 4 source and gives you the Surrogate die, which can be rolled once per wave when your fortress is being attacked. It gives you either a larva, a skitter, a burrower, or a mugwump, which you can place in your fortress on its promoted side. In this case, I rolled a burrower, which I'll then place in my fortress. Damage dealt to my fortress gate, including damage from the current attack, comes from this unit's HP instead of the fortress gate, but the gate is still doing the retaliation. This unit can't leave the fortress, but it can continue to soak attacks. If it's still in the fortress at the end of the wave, it'll be returned to your barracks. Level 2 is the Cocoon Surplus. It costs 4 source, and it gives you an extra CP for each following prep phase. Level 3 is the Expanded Hatchery. It costs 3 source, and it lets you select a larva minion each prep phase at no CP cost. The next set of fortress advancements fall under the Hive Altar, which let you use mercs in some unconventional ways. Level 1 is Splice. It costs 3 source, and once per wave during the build phase, you can use your build option to place a purchased merc unit in the Hive Altar. When you do this, you'll declare one of your minion types. I'm going to declare the Skitters. And those minions will all have this Merc's talents this wave. So if I prepare 2 Skitters, they will both have 2 range in addition to their dig talent. At the end of the wave, Roa is going to be discarded. Level 2 is Queen's Feast. It costs 3 source, and once per wave during the build phase, you can use your build option to discard a purchased Merc unit in order to recover health on your fortress gate. You'll receive health equal to half of the unit's health rounded up. In this case, discarding Londal gives me 2 health on my fortress gate, and as a reminder, the Griege's fortress starts at 10 but can go up to 15. It's important to note, however, that you can't use this advancement if Ekri's been defeated. The next fortress advancement structure is the Evolution Pit, which makes your ability to evolve even more powerful. Level 1 is the Evo Chamber. It costs 3 source, and during the prep phase, you can place one of your selected minions in the Evolution Pit in the evolving state instead of putting it in your deployment stack. That unit can evolve here, just as Griege Minions can evolve on Source Wells, adding health to it at the start of each of your turns, including your first turn. When the unit finishes evolving, in this case with 3 health, it can deploy on its promoted side from the deployment stack, remembering that if the health is higher, then you'll add that. Level 2 is the Evo Purifier. It costs 4 source, and when a minion finishes evolving, either from the Evolution Pit or a Source Well, you get the source reward from their basic side. In this Mugwump's case, we would have gotten 3 source for it. Level 3 is Evo Acceleration, which costs 4 source and gets you the Evo die, which is rolled whenever a larva finishes evolving. This die lets you replace the larva with your rolled result, either a skitter, a geckweb, or a mugwump. And of course the replacement will come in on its promoted side. Don't forget to combine this with your previous advancement, so you'll collect the source reward from the larva before replacing it with the geckweb. The tunnel system is the next set of fortress advancements, and this lets you use the tunnel access chips that some of your units can place on the board in order to deploy your units. Level 1 is Queen's Way, which costs 2 source, and it turns your tunnel accesses into a place where heroes can deploy from. So a Cool could now deploy from the fortress gate as normal, or can start its deployment from this tunnel access, though there has to be valid terrain around that tunnel access for her to deploy from there. Level 2 is Worker's Way. It costs 4 source, and now Griege Minions also have the option to either deploy from their fortress gate as normal, or deploy directly from the tunnel access. Level 3 is Shortcut, which costs 4 source, and now Griege heroes can move onto tunnel access chips in order to return directly to their fortress, instead of having to make the trek all the way back. Heroes do always heal back up to their full health when they return to the fortress, and instead of being out for the wave, after remaining in their fortress for an entire turn, a Cool here could deploy again, and again, whenever deploying, can come out of tunnel access instead of from the fortress gate if they would like to. The last fortress advancement structure is the Queen's Chambers, and this lets you add additional talents to your Queen Ekri. Level 1 is Stage 1 Evolution. It costs 4 source, and it gets you the Ekri die, which you can place on top of Ekri with the survival side face up. This gives Ekri the survival skill in addition to her other skills, and survival allows her to recover 1 health whenever she doesn't move or attack on her turn. Level 2 is Stage 2 Evolution. It costs 4 source, and you can now turn the die to the side that either adds Prepared or Toxic Secretion to Ekri. Prepared allows Ekri to reduce any damage dealt to her from retaliation by 1, and we previously talked about Toxic Secretion. Level 3 is Stage 3 Evolution. It costs 4 source, and you can now add Assault to Ekri as well, on top of the other skills you've already added. Alternatively, Ekri can give up all of the other skills granted by this die and get Quick Counter instead, a talent we've also previously talked about. So that brings us to the end of our overview of the Griege faction. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching.